All right, today we're going to dive into a book that for years has really stirred the pot when it comes to modern masculinity, Deida's The Way of the Superior Man. Look, whether you love it or you hate it, there's no denying its ideas have had a huge impact on how we talk about men, women, and relationships today.
So the book was framed as this kind of spiritual guide for men. And right away, people had strong opinions. Some found it incredibly insightful, and others, well, they found it deeply problematic. But no matter which side you fall on, you gotta understand the problem Deida was trying to solve, a very specific, modern problem he saw cropping up everywhere.
And this is the million-dollar question, right? As men and women have, thankfully, become more equal in society and in our careers, Deida argues that something else has been fading away, that raw sexual passion. He actually has a name for it, sexual neutrality. It's where you might be great friends, great partners, but that fire is just gone. So what gives? What's his big explanation for this?
Okay, so to get to the bottom of why that passion disappears, we have to start with the absolute core of his work. It's this foundational concept he calls the theory of sexual polarity. Honestly, this idea is the engine that drives the entire book. Here's the basic idea. Deida says that sexual attraction works just like a magnet or a battery. You know, there's this energetic charge, this spark that flows between two opposite poles, the masculine and the feminine. And when those two poles become too similar, too neutral, well, the charge gets weak and that spark just fizzles out. Now let's be super clear about something. When Deida talks about masculine and feminine, he is not talking about men and women in a rigid way. He's talking about energetic essences that he believes exist in all of us. The masculine essence is all about purpose, mission, and direction. It wants to go somewhere. The feminine essence, on the other hand, is all about love, connection, and the flow of life itself. The theory goes that we all have a core energy, and passion really ignites when two people with opposite cores get together.
This whole idea leads us straight into the first of three huge pillars from the book. And honestly, this might be its most famous and most controversial piece of advice. Your purpose has to come before your relationship.
Deida's advice on this is incredibly direct, no messing around. He says that for a man with a masculine core, his absolute #1 priority has to be finding his deepest purpose, his mission in life. And then, and this is the key part, everything else, including his family and his partner, should be organized around that central mission. It's the hub of the wheel.
Now, when Deida uses a loaded phrase like cheats his woman, he doesn't mean it in the typical sense. He means a man cheats her out of his full, grounded presence. See, a man who gives up on his purpose starts to feel empty and lost. And from that place, he just can't offer that steady, unwavering energy that creates polarity. He becomes weak, and according to Deida, the whole relationship pays the price.
So, you've found your purpose. Great, but you're not done. The second pillar is all about realizing that it's not enough to just have a purpose. You have to be constantly growing into it. And that means going beyond your limits. You know, most of us see fear as a stop sign, right? Something to run away from, but Deida flips that completely on its head. He sees fear as your guide. It shows you exactly where your edge is, that boundary of your comfort zone. And the superior man, he says, learns to live right there, at that edge, always pushing just a little bit further.
So how do you actually do this? Well, he lays out this kind of three-step dance with fear. First, you just use it as a signal, a little ping that tells you you're at a point of potential growth. Second, you don't run from it, but you also don't get all aggressive and attack it. You just stay with the feeling. And third, you honor your limit. You acknowledge it's there, and then you consciously choose to take one small step beyond it. It's all about courageous, sustainable growth.
All right, this final pillar brings it all back home, right into the relationship itself. If you have a clear purpose and you're committed to growth, how does a man actually show up for his partner? Deida's answer is simple but profound, by living with an open heart.
And this brings us to one of the book's most debated ideas, the concept of the feminine test. Deida argues that a woman will often challenge her partner, his mood, his decisions, his focus. But he says this isn't an attack. Instead, it's her way of feeling his strength, of checking to see if he's still grounded in his purpose and love, or if he's going to get knocked off balance easily.
So what's the recommended response? Not getting angry, not getting defensive. According to the book, the ideal is to remain in your unshakable center, totally grounded in your own truth. You meet her energy with love, maybe even some humor, and you embrace the challenge without letting it throw you. And, crucially, your sense of self-worth doesn't depend on her approval in that moment.
It's this steadfast presence, Deida claims, that allows her to feel safe and trust him completely.
Which really brings us full circle, doesn't it? Deida's framework paints a picture of a choice between this kind of comfortable neutrality and this electric polarity. And it leaves us with a pretty big question for our own lives. Can we actually build relationships that honor both social equality and that wild, unpredictable energy of sexual polarity? It's definitely something to think about.